Today we are making Viazi Ulaya, popularly known as Irish potatoes in Kenya. In this recipe, I wanted to share with you one of my secrets on how I elevate a kawaida potato and beef stew that we usually make in a sufuria to a meal that is so tasty. And how do I do that? Finish it off in the oven. And the ingredients that I used are barbecue sauce, pureed tomatoes. These are my pre-boiled potatoes. I boiled them but not enough for them to mash up. My hohos, that is red, green and yellow. My onions, both red and white. Only reason I have the small portion of white is because I ran out of the red onions. And these are my carrot slices. I cut them on the bias. They are a bit on the thick side because I do not like having mushy carrots. You can have them bigger or smaller, but this is the size that I prefer. My ginger and garlic, dhania or coriander, and my beef. So I started prepping the beef by adding plain wheat flour followed by freshly cracked black pepper. Then I made sure that my beef was lightly coated with the flour. Next, in my preheated sufuria, I added a couple of tablespoons of sunflower oil. And once the oil came to temperature, I placed my pieces of beef in the sufuria. I made sure that I did not overcrowd the sufuria because I wanted to sear the beef and not steam it. After 3 minutes, I turned over my beef pieces for the other side to brown as well. And once I was satisfied that all sides were browned and seared evenly, I took the beef off the sufuria, placed them into a bowl, and did the second batch. I seared my meat in 2 batches because my sufuria couldn't accommodate all the beef pieces at once. But by the time I was finishing up with the second round of searing my meat, I realized that the bottom of my sufuria had formed this brown layer that is referred to as fond, and I really didn't panic because it wasn't smoking, neither was it smelling burnt. So what I did is I reduced the heat slightly, added my onions together with a pinch of salt, and then cooked the onions until they just softened and turned translucent before adding my ginger and garlic. And so I cooked the ginger and garlic for a minute just to release their aroma. And then cracked black pepper, mixed everything in properly. And once I was sure that everything was well combined and softened, I returned my beef to the sufuria along with all the juices that had run out of the beef, and then I stirred the mixture and made sure that everything was properly mixed. So next I added my pureed tomatoes, and this started off the process of deglazing my sufuria because of the moisture content in the tomatoes. Okay, so I let them simmer for about 5 minutes for the tomatoes to cook off and for this mixture to reduce and thicken. And then I added my homemade beef stock, and this guaranteed me of the fact that the bottom of my sufuria was going to be fully deglazed by the time my beef would have been fully cooked. And so I covered and reduced the heat to a very gentle simmer and left my beef to simmer for about 45 minutes until it really softened. And at this point it's when I added my colored hohos and the carrots, mixed them in, And then I tasted for seasoning, that is the salt, and I added just a bit so that all the flavors would be rounded off very well. And then I covered and simmered the mixture for about 3 minutes or so for the vegetables to warm through. And once I was satisfied with how my stew was looking like, I came and added it on top of my potatoes that I had already arranged in my baking dish. And as I was editing the video, I realized that I forgot to show you people that my sufuria was fully deglazed. But from the sounds that my spoon is making as it scrapes the bottom of the sufuria, you can actually tell that the sufuria was fully deglazed, because it would be making that strange noise as if I'm scraping something from the bottom of the sufuria had it not been fully deglazed. Then all that flavor that was at the bottom of the sufuria was mixed into my beef stew. I added my coriander, my red onions, and my barbecue sauce. And then mixed everything together. And I started by using a metal spoon, which I quickly realized was a very bad idea because it was breaking down my potatoes, and that is not what I wanted. So I quickly switched over to my mwiko, and a mwiko is a wooden ladle, and proceeded to gently mix everything together until it was well incorporated and all the ingredients were very well spread out within the dish. Then I did a bit of housekeeping on my baking dish. I wiped off all the stew that had smeared on the sides of the baking dish, because had I put the baking dish as it was without cleaning it up in my oven, it would have burnt and started smoking in the oven, and the house would have really started to smell bad. Not forgetting it would have ruined my dish. Lastly, I added my unsalted butter just for that extra layer of flavor. You don't have to, this is totally optional. And so I put my dish in the oven, baked it at 200 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes before turning on the broiler to 250 degrees centigrade for 10 minutes for it to brown and to also acquire some char marks. And these are the results. You can see that the potatoes browned beautifully and the vegetables were charred appropriately. And then I served. Now you might be wondering, what would be the best accompaniment to this viazi vya Ulaya na nyama ya ng'ombe ya kuoka? So this is the thing. You can have the meal as is without any accompaniments. It's very filling as it is. Or you might want to add a fresh, vibrant vegetable salad. Or you can even decide to serve it with some white rice or chapati. So if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure that you share it out with your friends and spread the word about Jikoni magic and the wonderful Kenyan recipes that are found on this channel. And if you happen to make this dish or any other dish that is on my channel, please post the pictures on my Facebook and I'll be happy to interact with you there. Until next time, please keep it Jikoni magic. For more exciting Kenyan recipes, goodbye.